Yalara lay still under the red sky of Zitani, the dust around her dry and cold. Her thin silver skin was scratched, and her long white hair was tangled with dirt and wire. She had no legs. Only damaged stumps covered in old metal rings. The machines that once connected her to life were now gone. She was left to die like trash, forgotten by those who made her. The mining colony nearby was run by humans. They came here to dig and survive. And Evan was one of them, a quiet, strong man who fixed broken machines. He came to the old junkyard to look for spare parts. That's when he saw her, lying between metal crates and broken drone arms at first. He thought she was just another discarded robot. But then she blinked, slowly, painfully. Her glowing purple eyes looked straight into his, and in a voice that shook with weakness, she whispered one word: "Why?" Evan stepped back, shocked. She was alive, barely breathing, but alive. Her body was small, maybe the size of a human teenager, but her face had a soft glow, alien yet strangely beautiful. Her fingers trembled. Reaching out, not to grab, but to beg, Evan dropped to his knees. He knew the rules. No alien tech was allowed to be brought inside the human zones. No contact with discarded beings, especially ones considered failed. But he didn't care. He looked at her again, her eyes full of fear, pain, and a silent cry for help. He gently lifted her. She was lighter than expected. She didn't scream, just rested her head on his chest like she had nothing left to fight for. He carried her all the way back to his repair shack, far outside the colony walls. Inside the shack, he placed her on the softest thing he had, an old sleeping mat. He gave her water, drop by drop. Using a metal spoon, she tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Instead, she just stared at him with wide eyes, trying to understand why was he helping her. Hours passed. Evan cleaned the dirt from her wounds and wrapped the stumps where her legs should have been. He could see old surgery scars, cold and sharp. Whoever had done this didn't care if she lived or died. She wasn't born. Without legs, they were taken from her. He sat beside her and asked gently, "What's your name?" Her lips moved slowly. "Yalara." It sounded like music from another world. Evan nodded. "I'm Evan," he said. "You're safe now." But she didn't believe it. Her mind was still trapped in the labs, in the cold lights, the metal beds, the doctors who whispered numbers instead of names. She remembered the words they said before throwing her out. She's not useful. Can't breed. Waste of resources. Yalara had once hoped for more. She dreamed of family, love, life beyond wires and commands. But her own creators had erased those dreams with their cold judgment. And now, a human, her kind's oldest enemy, was the only one showing her kindness. The next morning, she woke up to the smell of warm food. Evan had made soup. He helped her sit up, holding her back with one strong arm. She didn't fight. She was too weak. But also, she didn't want to. He spoke softly while feeding her, telling small stories about machines and old Earth. She didn't understand every word, but she liked his voice. It was calm, not loud, not cold. It didn't hurt her ears like the shouting. From the labs, later that day, Evan pulled out some old boxes. Inside them were broken cybernetic limbs, leftovers from mining accidents. He looked at her legs, then at the parts. Maybe, just maybe, he could give her legs again, not perfect ones, but something to help her stand. Yalara watched him work. Her heart, weak and scared, beat a little faster, not from fear, but something strange, something warm. For the first time, she wondered, could she live? She looked at her hands, at the dirt on her skin. She touched her own face, and when Evan looked at her and smiled gently, she whispered, "Why do you help me?" He paused, wiped sweat from his forehead, and said, "Because you're not broken, just hurt, and hurt things can still heal." She didn't speak again that night, but as she lay on the mat, her eyes stayed open. looking at the stars through the cracked roof, and for the first time in her life, she allowed herself a thought. A simple, dangerous thought. Maybe I was never useless. Evan worked late into the night, his hands covered in oil and dust. The old parts were worn and rusty. But he was a skilled fixer. He had repaired broken machines, damaged drones, even patched together an old miner exosuit. But this was different. This was not about metal. This was about giving someone a chance to walk again, to live again. Ylara lay silently on the sleeping mat. Her eyes half closed. She watched Evan with quiet wonder. She didn't understand why. He was doing all this. No one had ever helped her without a reason. Her past was filled with commands, tests, and pain, not kindness, not care. Evan turned toward her, holding up a pair of cybernetic legs. They weren't beautiful, not polished or new, but they looked strong. Stronger than her broken body had ever felt. I'm going to attach these, he said gently, kneeling beside her. I'll go slow. Tell me if it hurts. She gave a small nod, her fingers twitching nervously. Evan's tools buzzed and clicked as he worked. The connection points on her legs sparked slightly. She gritted her teeth but didn't cry out. The pain was sharp, but she had known worse, much worse. When he was done, he backed away, wiping his hands. The legs were attached, but not yet active. He looked into her eyes and said softly, "Try moving." Ylara took a breath, then focused. The old implants in her spine buzzed. The metal legs jerked once. Then again, they moved. Slow and shaky, like a newborn creature learning to stand. But they moved. Tears formed in her eyes, not from pain, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She tried to sit up, and Evan quickly helped her. Together, they worked through it, hour after hour. Small movements turned into longer steps. She stood once, almost fell, then tried again, and again, and again. Each time she failed, she looked at Evan. He never looked disappointed. He just nodded and said, "Try again, at night." When the stars blinked above the broken roof, Ylara lay awake. Her legs buzzed softly with power. Her body was different now, stronger, but her heart still felt empty. She thought about the cold lab, the doctors with blank eyes, the chart that marked her not breeding capable. She had cried back then, begged them not to take her legs, begged them not to throw her away, but they did it anyway, because she was useless, because she wasn't good enough for their program. Evan didn't know all of this, but he saw the shadow in her eyes, the way she flinched at loud sounds, the way she curled up when sleeping, like she was trying to hide. One morning, he found her standing near the doorway, holding onto a metal beam. She looked at him with shaky pride and whispered, "I walked." He smiled wide. "Yes, you did." She looked down at her legs, then back at him. "I'm not sure what I am anymore," she said softly. Evan walked over, stood beside her, and replied, "You're alive, and that's enough for now." Later that day, he gave her a small book with simple words and pictures. "Earth Stories," the cover said. She looked at it, confused. "What is this?" "Something to read, too. Learn something different," he replied. Ylara opened the pages and traced the letters with her fingers. The first story was about a child who lost their way, but found someone who helped them. She read slowly, but each word felt like a seed planted inside her. Maybe she could be more than just a broken tool. Maybe she could be someone new, outside the shack. The sun set behind the red mountains. The wind was cold, but not cruel. Ylara walked out with slow, careful steps. Evan followed close, ready to catch her if she fell, but she didn't. They stood together in silence. The stars above twinkled like tiny answers waiting to be found. She looked up and whispered, "Do you think I can come something better?" Evan didn't laugh, didn't mock her. He just said, "I don't think, Ylara." I believe. She turned to him, her eyes soft but unsure. I'm scared. Evan, he nodded. Me too. Sometimes she reached out slowly, her hand touching his arm, not with fear this time, but with trust, for the first time. She smiled, a real small smile, and Evan knew this was only the beginning. The air was cool that evening as the sun dipped low behind the jagged hills. Evan packed a small bag with warm food, 2 bottles of water, and a folded cloth blanket. He looked back at Yalara, who was standing by the door with both hands gripping the side for balance. Her new legs were working better every day. Though she still walked slow, but this time she didn't ask why they were going. She simply said, I want to see the world. Evan smiled. Then let's go. They walked together across the dry ground. Yalara's steps were uneven but steady every time she stumbled. She reached for Evan's hand he always offered. Without hesitation, the climb was gentle. The trail dusty and scattered with alien flowers that glowed faintly blue under the fading light. When they reached the top, Yalara gasped. Below them stretched a wide valley painted gold and orange. By the setting sun, small rivers shimmered like silver threads. The sky above was open, peaceful, and full of stars, just beginning to shine. It's beautiful, she whispered. Evan laid the blanket on the ground and helped her sit. He handed her a container of warm stew. She took a bite and closed her eyes. It tastes like nothing I've had before, he chuckled. Probably because it's old soldier food. She looked at him, then back at the valley, and suddenly, from deep inside her chest, something came out. A soft sound, short, strange, unfamiliar. It was laughter. Evan turned quickly. Surprised, did you just laugh? Yalara covered her mouth, eyes wide. I don't know. It just came out, he grinned. That's a good thing. She lowered her hand, unsure. It felt nice, he nodded. That's because you're alive, Yalara. And laughter means something's healing. She looked at him for a long moment, then looked down at her metal legs. They said I was broken, not fit to breed, no use to anyone. Evan's face turned serious. They were wrong. She tilted her head. How do you know? He picked up a small rock and threw it into the valley. Because only the living can laugh. Yalara didn't answer. But her fingers curled tightly around the edge of the blanket. She felt warm, not from the sun, but from inside. Something in her was waking up, a voice long buried under fear and pain. A voice that whispered, you matter. That night, Evan lit a small fire using old flint and dry sticks. They sat close, the fire crackling, casting soft shadows on the rocks. Evan told her a story, a simple one, about when he was young on Earth, about a dog he once saved from a frozen lake. He laughed at his own clumsy mistakes, and Yalara found herself smiling again. Why do humans tell stories? She asked softly. Evan looked at her, because stories help us remember who we are and who we want to be. Yalara was quiet, watching the flames dance. She thought about her own past silent white rooms, doctors in masks, machines poking. Her skin, no stories, only orders, only numbers. She never had a name until she chose one herself, Yalara. It meant rain over fire in her old language, now sitting beside Evan. She felt like the fire was no longer burning her, it was warming her after the fire died down. They returned to the shack under the moonlight. Yalara walked more steadily now. She was tired. But she didn't want Evan to carry her. She wanted to walk on her own, inside. She sat at the table while Evan cleared the dishes. She picked up the Earth storybook again and tried to read. Her lips moved slowly as she sounded out the words. She got stuck, and Evan gently corrected her. She didn't get angry. She just tried again. When she finished the short story, she looked up and asked, "Can I have my own story one day?" Evan leaned on the table and replied, "You already do, and you're writing it every day you choose to live." Ylara blinked, feeling a strange pressure in her chest again. It wasn't fear, not sadness. It was something bigger, something full, and this time she laughed again, just a little louder, not because of a joke, but because she finally believed she could. Evan looked at her with a mix of pride and wonder. He saw it clearly now. She wasn't just healing, she was becoming. The morning sun crept through the cracks of the repair shack's roof. Ylara was already awake, sitting near the open window. She had the Earth storybook in her hands, and her eyes moved slowly across the page. Her metal legs hummed gently as she shifted her weight from one to the other. Practicing balance, she had made it to the end of the book, and she smiled. This was her small victory. Evan walked in, carrying 2 mugs of warm synth coffee, finished it. He asked with a grin. She nodded, every word. He handed her the drink and sat down beside her. "I think you're ready for the next one." Ylara was about to reply when a loud, buzzing sound filled the air. They both froze. The noise grew louder coming from outside. Evan rushed to the door and looked up. A patrol drone hovered just above the shack. Blinking red, recording everything, Ylara stood slowly, fear crawling back into her bones. "They found me," she whispered. Evan stepped outside, waving his hands. "This is private property. There's no crime here." The drone didn't respond. It just hovered a few seconds longer, then turned and flew away at high speed. Evan cursed under his breath. That afternoon, a message came through the colony communication tower. A cold official voice said, "Evan Reed, report to the Outer Colony Council immediately." Evan left Ylara with a promise. "Stay inside, no matter what. I'll come back." She nodded. But inside, she was trembling. Old fear returned of being taken. Locked away, judged, at the council hall, 5 humans sat behind a large steel desk. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were sharp. "You've been seen harboring alien property." One of them said flatly, "She's not property." Evan replied, keeping his voice steady, "She's a person." And she was thrown away like garbage. The council leader, an older woman with gray hair, leaned forward. "Do you know what she is?" "I know who she is," Evan answered. "She's someone trying to live. She's a failed experiment." The woman said coldly. Her species marked her unfit for reproduction. She was discarded because her body cannot continue the bloodline. Evan clenched his fists, so that means she should die. "She's a danger, emotionally unstable, unpredictable." Another member added, "Your attachment to her is clouding your judgment." "She hasn't hurt anyone," Evan said. "She's reading, learning, walking again. She's more human than half the machines we work with." The council exchanged glances. "You have 2 choices." The leader said, "Turn her over to us, and you'll keep your position. Or keep hiding her, and be exiled from this colony." Evan didn't hesitate. "I choose her," back at the shack. Ylara sat by the window, waiting. When the door opened and Evan walked in, she stood quickly. "You're okay?" she asked. He nodded. "We have to leave." She didn't ask why, she just started packing. By nightfall, they were gone. They left behind the shack, the valley, the book, everything. But they had each other. They traveled through the old forest. Paths where few dared to go. The forest was silent. Filled with strange plants and glowing roots, it felt like a dream, unreal and peaceful. They set up a small shelter near a quiet stream, a place far from the eyes of drones and the hands of rulers. Evan started building with scrap wood and old panels. Ylara helped, carrying pieces and holding tools. Every day, their small home took shape, and every night, they sat by the fire, sharing stories and quiet thoughts. One night, while watching the flames, Ylara asked, "Why did you choose me?" Evan looked at her seriously. "Because you didn't deserve what happened to you," he said. "Because you deserve to live, to choose, to be free." Tears touched her eyes. She wiped them quickly, but Evan reached out and took her hand. "You're not broken, Yalara," he said again. "Don't let them tell you who you are," for the first time in her life. Yalara felt something she never knew she needed. Not just kindness, not just safety. She felt wanted. She stood up, walked a few steps in the soft grass, then turned to Evan and whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." The wind moved gently through. The trees, the stars above, were bright, and for the first time since her legs had been taken, Yalara danced, slowly, carefully. Not to entertain, not to please, but because she wanted to, and Evan watched with quiet awe, knowing something powerful was being reborn in that moment, not just her body, but her soul. The forest was quiet most days, filled with strange colors and gentle sounds. Birds with crystal wings flew between branches, and the leaves shimmered in the wind. Yalara loved the silence. It wasn't empty like the labs. It was peaceful, alive. She and Evan built a new life here. Their home was small. Just 2 rooms and a roof of solar tiles. But it was safe. She woke up each day to birdsong, not sirens. She walked on her metal legs through soft grass, not metal floors. She even laughed Naufen, freely and without fear. One morning, Yalara found a tiny creature stuck in a root. Its legs were tangled, its wings damaged. She knelt slowly and freed it with gentle hands. It fluttered for a second, then flew away. She smiled to herself and whispered, "You're free now," then paused, because those same words felt meant for her too. Evan spent his days fixing old solar panels and mapping the hills. He wanted to make sure they had power and water. And, more importantly, that no one could track them, but they both knew something was coming. Drones don't forget, and the council rarely forgave. That night, Yalara sat by the fire, legs tucked under a blanket. Evan cooked vegetables over the flame and told her about ancient earth forests. She listened, head tilted, eyes full of wonder. "You miss your world?" she asked. "Sometimes," he replied, "but I'd rather be here with you." She looked at him for a long time, not like a helper or a rescuer, but like someone she trusted fully and more. Just as Evan was about to say something, a sharp sound broke the night, a branch snapping, then another. He stood quickly, eyes scanning the trees. "Inside," he said softly, but firmly. Yalara didn't ask questions. She moved fast, entering the shelter and grabbing the small emergency bag. It had food, tools, and an old plasma flare. Evan stood outside with a flashlight. The forest was darker than usual. Then a glow appeared in the distant syringe and growing fast. "Fire," Yalara whispered, stepping beside him. It wasn't natural fire. It burned too hot, too sudden. Someone had started it. Someone had found them. Back. "Tunnel," Evan said, grabbing her hand. They had built a small escape path under the house. They never thought they'd need it so soon. Smoke filled the air as they crawled through the narrow tunnel. Yalara's lungs burned, but she kept going. Evan was behind her, blocking, falling. Dust with his arms, the tunnel opened into the far side of the forest, just near the river. They climbed out together, gasping for breath. Behind them, the fire roared. It climbed the trees, hungry and angry. "We have to go," Evan said. But when he looked at Yalara's face changed. She had blood on her forehead. She had hit a root while crawling. He moved to help her, but she shook her head. "No time, you said, we run." Evan nodded, pride and fear mixing in his chest. She was strong, now stronger than ever. They ran through the trees, dodging branches, following the river path. After 2 hours, they stopped near a small cave hidden by moss and stone. It was cold, but safe. They entered and sat close together. Their clothes smelled of smoke, their skin covered in ash. "I'm sorry," Evan said quietly. "I should have been ready." Yalara looked at him, eyes burning not from smoke, but from anger, not at him. At them. "They want to erase me." She said slowly, "They burned our home." To destroy me, Evan didn't argue. He knew she was right, but before he could speak, Yalara pulled something from her coat, a small glowing device barely the size of her palm. "What's that?" Evan asked. "I took it from the lab. Before they threw me out," she said. "I didn't know why I kept it, but maybe now I do." The device blinked slowly. It was old, but powerful part of her original biology research. It held data about her, maybe even the truth they tried to hide. Yalara stared at the blinking light and whispered, "I want to know who I really am." Evan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll find out." Together, they sat in the dark cave. The fire now far behind them. Their home was gone, but not their hope, not their will to fight. Outside, the stars returned to the sky. The forest was quiet again. But this time, something new had awakened, not just survival. But the first flicker of resistance, the cave, was dark and cold. But Yalara didn't feel weak anymore. She sat near the small fire Evan had built with care, staring at the glowing device in her hand. It blinked softly, like a heartbeat. It carried old memories, buried truths, and maybe answers. Evan watched her from the other side of the fire, his arms crossed, his face calm but focused. He knew something had changed in her. She was no longer the frightened girl from the junkyard. She was different now, stronger. "I want to activate it," she said quietly. Evan nodded. "Then let's do it." He helped her connect the device to an old datapad. The screen flickered to life. Lines of alien text scrolled across it. Yalara leaned closer, her eyes reading fast. The language was hers, forgotten, but not lost. The report began to play. It was a log from the lab where she was made. Test results. Genetic scans, medical notes, all cold, all clinical. She failed reproductive expectation, the voice said. Low compatibility with standard breeding protocols. Yalara's hands trembled. But she kept reading. Then her eyes widened. "What is it?" Evan asked. "She wasn't broken," she whispered. "They weren't compatible with me. My body evolved differently. They didn't understand it, so they rejected it." Evan leaned closer. "So you can." "Yes," Yalara said. Tears forming. "I can give life, just in a different way." The truth hit her like lightning. She was never barren, never useless. She was simply unique. And they threw her away because she didn't fit their system. The device's screen changed. Again, a final note from a scientist subject. Y13 showed signs of emotional development beyond projection. Destroyed test logs to avoid questions from funding board. They erased who I was. She said in a low voice, "They feared what I could become." Evan didn't speak. He reached out and held her hand. It was cold, shaking, but filled with something new, fire. Days passed in the cave. They survived on small plants, water from the stream, and warmth from each other. But something else began to happen. Yalara started to feel strange. Her body grew tired faster. Her heartbeat shifted. She began to wake in the night with sharp hunger and warmth in her belly. Evan noticed first. "You're pale," he said one morning. She tried to laugh. "I'm always pale." But then she collapsed right into his arms. He carried her gently, laying her down and checking her vitals. Her heart was strong. Her body wasn't dying. It was changing. Yalara opened her eyes slowly, whispering, "I feel different. Like something inside me is alive." Evan hesitated, then spoke softly, "I think you might be pregnant." She stared at him in shock. "That's not possible," I was told. She stopped, because now she knew the truth. Her biology wasn't broken. It was different. Her child would be proof. She touched her belly with both hands, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I never thought I'd feel this," she said. "I never thought I'd carry life." Evan knelt beside her. his voice gentle. You're not just carrying life, you're creating something new. Something this galaxy has never seen. A human and an alien, a child of two worlds. A living answer to all the cruelty, all the rejection. In the following days, Yalera glowed. She walked slower now. Her steps were lighter. She hummed old songs from her people, soft lullabies she remembered from before the labs. Evan built a better shelter in the hills with stronger walls and better warmth. He grew more protective, more careful. He spoke less, but smiled more. They had found something rare, not just love, but hope. At night, Yalera would rest with her head on his shoulder. She would whisper to the small life inside her, telling stories, singing songs, promising that they would never be unwanted, never unloved, and every time Evan would sit beside her, guarding them both. With a weapon in one hand and faith in the other, the fire outside might return. The council might come again, but this time, they wouldn't just be fighting for survival. They would be fighting for family, for future, for a child born not from systems and labs, but from freedom, choice, and love. The small shelter stood quietly among the hills, hidden by tall grass and glowing trees. Inside, Yalera rested on a soft bed Evan had built from woven roots and cloth. Her face was calm, her hands gently resting on her stomach. She was close. Now, the child inside her kicked softly, responding to her gentle hums. Evan sat near the door, keeping watch. His eyes scanned the trees and the distant stars. He knew this peace wouldn't last forever. Someone would come, someone always did. But for now, he listened, to her voice, to the quiet beat of new life. It made his chest feel warm, heavy, and full. He had never believed in fate, but now? He wasn't sure. Days passed slowly, filled with calm moments and small preparations. Evan gathered herbs and supplies, just in case the child came early. Yalera grew quieter, her eyes glowing softer. Sometimes she would speak to the child. Other times she would hold Evan's hand in silence. No words were needed. Then one night, under the pale moonlight, it began. Yalera woke him with a soft cry. "It's time," she whispered. Evan's heart jumped. He had never delivered a child before, but he nodded. "I'm here." The pain came in waves. Strong but steady, Yalera breathed slowly, gripping his hand. The cave was warm. Lit by small lights and a crackling fire, sweat ran down her face, and tears filled her eyes, but she didn't scream. She endured. Hours passed. Evan wiped her face and whispered encouragement. "You're strong, you're brave, you're almost there." Then a soft cry filled the cave, high and clear. A sound that didn't belong to either world, but something new, something beautiful. Yalera gasped and reached out as Evan rapped. The tiny forming cloth. "It's a girl," he said, voice shaking. "She's perfect." Yalera held her daughter close. The child had pale violet skin, soft white hair, and eyes that shimmered with both human warmth and alien light. Tears fell from Yalera's eyes as she whispered, "You are everything they said I couldn't be." Evan sat beside them, unable to speak. He had faced machines, storms, even council threats, but nothing had ever felt this big, this real. They named her Lyra, a name from both of their worlds, meaning light in the dark. For days, they stayed in the shelter, caring for Lyra, singing to her, feeding her. Yalera healed slowly, but each time she looked at her daughter, she felt stronger. She was no longer the broken girl from the lab. She was a mother now, but peace did not last. One morning, the sound of engines broke the sky. Evan stepped outside and saw it, a council ship, black and silver, descending slowly. He stood in front of the shelter, weapon ready. Yalera stayed inside, cradling Lyra, her heart pounding. The ship landed softly, and out came three figures, two guards and a scientist in white robes. They didn't raise weapons. They didn't threaten. Instead, the scientist stepped forward. We received a signal. From Subject Y-13's device, Evan didn't lower his gun. "She has a name," he said. "She has a life now." The scientist nodded slowly. "We don't want to harm her. We only want to see the child." Yalara stepped outside, holding Lyra in her arms. Her legs, once made of scrap, now carried her with strength. She looked at the council members with clear eyes. "She is not your test subject. She is my daughter." The scientist looked at the child, and for a moment, he softened. "She's remarkable," he whispered. "We didn't believe it was possible." "It was never impossible," Yalara said. "You just didn't want to believe in something different." There was silence. Then the scientist looked at Evan. "We won't take her, but others may come. They will want to study her. Control her." Evan stepped forward. "Let them try." The scientist nodded once, turned, and left with the guards. The ship rose into the sky and vanished into the clouds. Yalara stood tall, holding Lyra close. She didn't tremble. She didn't cry. Because she had everything they once said she never could have. A voice, a choice, a child, a future, back inside. Evan held them both in his arms, and in that quiet space, among trees and stars, a new chapter began, not just for them, but for a galaxy that didn't yet know what was coming, because the child of two worlds had been born. And she would grow strong, guided by love, protected by truth, and raised by the two who believed in what no one else would.